Hey guys, this is Mike. So we'll walk through some basics of Google Earth Pro. So when you bring it up, click on View, and if you have sidebar unchecked, make sure that this is on, and that gives you this thing. You can see when we uncheck it, it'll go away or be added. So you want that. So you type in the name of your course. We could pick any course. Let's pick Riviera, for instance. So there's a couple things you want to look at first. So in your sidebar, uh, under this layers, um, you want to expand this, and then make sure that terrain is checked. 3D buildings can be checked or unchecked. It'll change how the image appears. It basically creates like graphics on top of the image. So you see, like when it's unchecked, it looks like this. So you can just leave it checked for now. So once you have this checked and this checked, notice that as I move the mouse around the screen, the values on the bottom are changing. So this is the latitude and longitude, elevation in feet. So you can see as I move this around, elevation changes. So that for any point on the map or image, that as I move my cursor, it's giving me the actual elevation, and that's feet above sea level, I believe. This eye altitude, you could ignore this. We don't actually use this for anything. To zoom in or out, you use the mouse wheel. So if I do the mouse wheel forward, I zoom in. If I do the mouse wheel backwards, I move out. Another thing you could do is when I hold down the shift button, if I left click on my mouse and then drag down, it'll change the angle that I'm viewing in. So this gets very powerful because now I can get down to like ground level, and now I'm going to zoom in again with my mouse wheel, and you'll see as I do this, I can actually start to see what the land looks like. I see the topography, I can see hills, I can see depressions and whatnot. So that combined with looking at elevation gives me an idea of what is happening. So for instance, I can see that there's a slope here where it's fairly level and then it starts going uphill, and you can see the elevation changes. I can visually see this in the image, right? This looks to be higher than this, and as I move the mouse, I see that the elevation changes from 279, 280, 281, 282, 283, 284, 285, 286, 287, 288, 289, 290. So it's basically like a 14-foot drop from the green to here. So when we slope this in game, we would probably put some kind of slope value here. So if the ball ended up over here, it would be an uphill lie uh, going into the green. So that's basically how this works. Again, it gets very powerful as I move the mouse down. I get to here, and then as I hold down Shift and hold down Shift, hit the hold down the left mouse key, and then scroll right or left, and then I can rotate the image as well. So that's the basics of image rotation. Another important thing to look at is this value in the lower left hand. So if I click on this, it'll actually bring up different historical images of the same thing. So for instance, if I click on this, I get this little timeline in the top left of my screen. And so right now this is imagery as of 12/1985. So if I scroll all the way to the right, I can see the most updated imagery. And you can see, not all imagery is going to be great. So this imagery is from Maxar Technologies, which is a third-party imagery provider, and it's from April 8th, 2022. As I click over here, so now I see imagery from February 2022, and this has no imagery attribution, so this is actually Google imagery itself. And you'll see there's different qualities of imagery based on the dates. So this is actually looks like it was actually near when the Genesis tournament was, because you could see a lot of the stands are actually still in there, still in the imagery. So now we'll go back again. So now this is March 2021. March 2020, again, this is not Google imagery, this is Maxar Technologies, and you can see it's not quite as sharp or vivid. So basically we use this to to look at historical imagery. There's different ways or reasons why we would want to do this. When we capture the whole images, there's basically two major approaches to do that. One is to basically kind of zoom in. Like, let's say we found imagery that we want to use. We would zoom in and fill the image with the hole, and then save that image, and then we build the live file on top of this, which is, again, a live file is one of the transparent layer files, and then we mark off where's the fairway, where are the bunkers, where's the green, and so on and so forth. That's one approach, and then we have to do that 18 times, so we would actually capture 18 different images. So like I would do this hole, and then I would do this hole, and then I would do whatever the routing is. I would basically just capture 18 separate hole images. The other way to do it is not through Google Earth Pro, but some different software where I basically am capturing imagery for the entire course. So I would capture one massively large image of the entire course. Of course, the resolution would be more like this for every hole. And then based on that, then I do one layer file for the entire course all in one shot. And then once that's done, then I basically go into Photoshop and I cut out rectangular images of all the various holes. So for me, that's the way I do it. I find it much more efficient in terms of utilization of my time, because if I do hole by hole, you find yourself, if this is my whole image for, let's say, this particular hole, I have to mark off this bunker, this bunker, this bunker. I have to mark off this bunker because it's on an adjacent fairway. I have to mark off this bunker. And what you end up doing is you end up marking off the same object more than once. So for instance, this bunker gets mapped off or marked off when I'm doing this image, and then if there's a separate image for this hole, then I have to mark off this bunker again. I have to mark off this bunker again. So there's like a lot of repetitive work or redundant work, which I try to avoid by just using one single image and then cutting it up after the fact. So I hope that gives you the basics of the Google Earth Pro, what we're looking to do here. Another actually useful thing is if you go into Tools and click Ruler, that brings up this little pop-up, and you can select either line or path. So let's say we just select line and make sure mouse navigation is clicked on. So when I zoom in, if I click on any point in the image or map, it's going to create a point, and then as I drag the mouse, it's drawing a line. And what this is useful for is measuring distances. So for instance, if I measure to here and then I left click to set the point, it shows that the length is 295 yards from this point to this point. Now you can obviously change this to whatever values you want. I think the default is probably like something other than yards, but I change it to yards because that's what we measure things in and for golf. The other useful thing is this shows you the heading. So this is based on the orientation to true north. So for instance, if I drag this from the back tee to the green, that tells me that the hole direction is 225 yards. This is actually useful, not necessarily for doing the sloping work, but it's useful for letting us know the orientation of the hole, because when the game gets the weather conditions, it's using a weather service where it gives the wind direction oriented to north. So this is how the game knows which way the wind is blowing on any particular hole, because it knows that this hole is oriented 225 degrees in relation to north. So when it gets the weather, if the weather's coming out, or the wind is coming from 270 degrees, it can orient it based on the image and then figure out exactly which way the wind is blowing at any given moment. So important to know, not necessarily important for what we're going to be asking for help with. Another thing, on the ruler, instead of path, if you want to actually measure a path, you can do the same thing where I have the length set to yards. I left click, and then each time I left click, it's basically going to create an anchor point. And so there's one anchor point. And if I draw it again, now it shows the measurement from here to here plus here to here. So